Nitana, you can start.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to the exclusive live briefing concerning the US-Israel-Iran war presented by Shurat HaDin. Over the past 3 years since the atrocities of October 7th, Shurat HaDin has been fighting on a critical front in Israel's defense, the legal battlefield. While Israel fights terrorists on the ground, we fight those who enable them in the courts. Our strategy has been simple but powerful. Hold accountable the institutions that claim neutrality, yet empower terror. We filed a groundbreaking lawsuit against the Red Cross for its failure to fulfill its humanitarian mandate. For months after October 7th, Israeli hostages were held in Gaza without access, without medical visits, and without even basic confirmation of their condition. The Red Cross, whose mission is to protect prisoners and civilians during war, failed to act. We also brought legal action against UNRWA after evidence revealed that employees of the agency were directly involved in the October 7th massacre and that its infrastructure had long been embedded with terrorist organizations, schools, facilities, and funding that were supposed to serve humanitarian purposes were instead exploited to sustain Hamas war machine. At the international level, we find legal action against the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court for abusing his authority and pursuing politically motivated investigations against Israeli leaders and soldiers while ignoring the mass atrocities committed against Israeli civilians. We also launched legal action against Al Jazeera, whose reporting has repeatedly crossed the line from journalism into operational support and propaganda for terrorist groups. These cases reflect the broader principle. Terror does not operate alone. It survives through networks of legitimacy, funding, and political protection. Our work is to dismantle those networks. But today, the legal battlefield has expanded. In the past year, we have seen a dangerous campaign accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza and accusing Israeli soldiers of systematic war crimes. These accusations are not simply false. They are strategically designed. The goal is to criminalize Israel's right to defend itself, to isolate Israel diplomatically, and to intimidate Israeli soldiers and commanders with a threat of international prosecution. This weaponization of international law has become one of the most powerful tools used against democracies fighting terrorism. And this is exactly what unfolds today in the current war with Iran. After years of Iranian attacks across the region, missile attacks, proxy militias, and deeply involvement of nuclear weapons, when Israel and the United States act to meet threat, they are immediately accused of violating international law and destabilizing the region. Almost from the very first minute that Israel and the United States initiated this operation, accusations became to surface, claims of war crimes, of launching a war of aggression, of derailing diplomatic negotiations. These accusations are false. Iran was not negotiating in good faith. It was not seeking a genuine agreement. It was not working to lift its people from economic hardship. Instead, it continued its pursuit of nuclear weapons, expanded its ballistic missile arsenal, and funded and armed terrorist proxies around the Middle East. Faced with an existential threat, Israel and the United States had no choice but to act, and to act decisively. This is an act of self-defense, which under international law, every nation has the right to undertake. Yet, the message that is pushed is clear. Terrorists and rogue regimes may attack civilians, but democracies are condemned when they defend themselves. This double standard is one of the greatest threats we are facing today. In Shurat HaDin, we join the national effort immediately. We are fighting to ensure that international law is not hijacked by those who abuse it. We are fighting to expose the networks that protect terrorism, and we are fighting to ensure that the law stands with the victims of terror, not those who commit it. Today, we have the privilege to presenting Brigadier General Amir Avivi, a very dear friend of Shurat HaDin. Brigadier General Avivi is retired senior officer of the Israel Defense Force with more than 30 years of experience in national security, counterterrorism, and military leadership. During his service, he held several key command and strategic positions, including commander of the Sagir Brigade, deputy commander of the Gaza Division, director of the Office of the Chief of Staff, and commander of the School of Combat Engineering. After retiring from the IDF in 2017, Avivi founded and now chairs the Israel Defense and Security Forum, also known as Habitfonistim, a movement composed of thousands of senior Israeli reserve officers focused on strengthening Israel's national security strategy. Avivi is a prominent public speaker and commentator on Middle Eastern security affairs and has been recognized as one of the influential voices in discussions about Israel's strategic future. The general is a great friend of our Law Center, and he's going to present to us his ideas, understanding, and opinions on the war against Iran and the future of the region once the fighting concludes. After his speech, we will take some questions from the crowd. General Avivi, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Nitzana. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak for Shurat HaDin. We're living in very meaningful and historical moments as the US and Israel are fighting together against this evil regime in Iran. And to understand the context of the fight, we need to go back to June, to the 12-day war, and really understand how it impacted everything that is happening now. So I remember we finished the attack against Hezbollah, and we started a ceasefire. That day, I had a meeting with the Minister of Defense. At the time, it was Yoav Gallant. And Yoav said to me, you know, Amir, Iran's doctrine is to be based on strategic depths, on the militias, the proxies that they build. They lost Hamas, they lost Hezbollah, who still exists, but lost the capability to really endanger dramatically Israel. And now, in this reality, Iran is going to make a run towards nuclear weapons. This is the way the regime believes they can safeguard the regime. And at that moment, back then, it was clear that a race started. And the question was, are they going to have nuclear weapons, which 100% they would have not hesitated to shoot at Israel, and if they had the range, also the US, or will manage to stop them before. And when we started the ceasefire, that day, the Prime Minister announced we started a ceasefire in Lebanon. We are still keeping freedom of operation in Lebanon to the great Hezbollah, but we are now shifting the whole center of gravity from Lebanon to Iran. And not many people listen to this. People were really busy with the hostages, with Gaza. All the media was focusing all the time on the issue of the hostages. But at that moment, the whole Israeli defense establishment shifted its center of gravity to prepare for the biggest mission of all. For the first time, attacking Iran which was something that, many people thought maybe is not even possible. I knew, and my organization knew all along our capabilities and ability to attack. We were sure that we can do it and win, but people were skeptical. But in the months and months of preparations for the attack, I can tell you that Israel developed technologies that are beyond imagination, that really bend the laws of physics and chemistry. Technologies that not only enabled us to really achieve our missions in 12 days, but really are going to impact even a generation ahead and give Israel a huge, huge strategic advantage. And then the attack came, and we were attacked by surprise. And in 2 days, we were already controlling the Iranian airspace. We opened the corridor to Tehran. And because of this huge success, the US joined with the B-2s and attacked the nuclear sites. And when the war ended after 12 days, Iran completely lost its deterrence internally and internationally. And following that, we saw several phenomena. One was that even the Europeans suddenly became emboldened and reinstated the sanctions, harsh sanctions on the Iranian regime, basically getting out of the JCPOA. And we saw the Iranian people rising and demonstrating, huge demonstrations. And following these demonstrations, the call of the president to the people, storm the centers of government, and help will come. Help is on its way. The Iranian people rose and did that, and unfortunately, it ended with tens of thousands of Iranians killed by the regime, butchered in the most terrible way. And at the same time, even before the demonstrations, what Israel saw at that time and shared with the US is that this Iranian regime, instead of learning the lesson and saying, okay, we didn't understand how powerful Israel is and the US, maybe we should wait, maybe we should wait for a few years until President Trump finishes, his term, and maybe Netanyahu. No, a minute after the war ended, they felt humiliated, and they decided to push very strongly to rebuild the capabilities. They started rebuilding the nuclear sites. They started rebuilding their ballistic missile capabilities, which we degraded a lot in the 12-day war. They invested $700 million in Hezbollah, and this is a country that hardly has water, no electricity. The currency is not functioning, but they have money to pay Hezbollah and build missiles. And in a way, it connects this mentality, this way of thinking. It connects to the story of Purim, which we celebrated now. One of the amazing moments in the story of Purim is when a man comes home and he brags to his family. He says, look how important I am. I'm the right hand of the king, and I have money, and I have power, I have everything. But then he says, but none of this matters if Mordechai doesn't bow. So the only thing he cared about was to humiliate the Jews, or if in the context of this regime, to destroy the Jewish state. It's an obsession, and they're willing to give up everything. They're willing to die. They're willing to do anything to achieve this mission, to destroy the Jewish state. And Khomeini has been saying that for many, many years, for decades. It's hard for us to understand the logic of a regime that is basically committing a kind of suicide, but this is their mentality. And they were willing to take the chance and rebuild their capabilities. So Israel, anyhow, was planning to attack again. I can tell you that when the 12-day war ended, the chief of staff announced this was the end of a glorious chapter in an ongoing campaign. The understanding was it was a very good campaign, but a very good operation, a chapter, but there is an ongoing campaign and we have to prepare for the next step. And Israel immediately as the 12-day war ended, started preparing for war. We knew this is going to come. We made a lot of preparations, many lessons learned, but also did the Iranians. They also rebuilt their capabilities, and we shared all this intelligence with the US, and we knew that the Iranians are not going to agree to anything, and the only way to stabilize the Middle East, to bring security, to bring prosperity, is to bring down this regime. We need a regime change. And this understanding exists also in the US, in the administration, and therefore, in the last few months, Israel and the US have coordinated and planned very well a war that will bring down this regime and will change end to end the future of the region. I would dare say that probably we'll have peace with Iran before we have peace with Saudi Arabia. This war is not going to stop until there will be unconditional surrender of the Iranian regime and its proxies. I can say it's going well. So a lot of preparations, amassing forces, a lot of coordination. And the big question was, and this is the thing that most I was worried about, are we going to be able to surprise them again? We surprised them in the 12-day war. How do you surprise once again? And surprisingly enough, we did. We managed to surprise them again. And we took out, in the first minute, their leader and 40 of the most prominent military and political leaders of Iran. This is how 4 days ago this big operation started. But what we are experiencing now is nothing like the 12-day war. In the 12-day war, it was mostly Israel attacking with a very pinpointed mission to deal mostly with the nuclear sites and also a bit the ballistic missiles. Now we're talking about a full-scale attack of Israel and the US with the goal to bring down the regime, to do a regime change. Tens of thousands of targets were planned and divided between Israel and the US. They were divided geographically, but they also were divided by different missions. For example, the US is dealing with the Iranian Navy. And as of this morning, the US destroyed entirely the Iranian Navy. 17 ships are deep in the sea, and under command and control. And at the same time, both countries are attacking their ballistic missile sites. 86% of the ballistic missiles were destroyed. The air defense is almost completely destroyed, and we are days before all of the airspace of Iran will be in Israeli-American control. And this is dramatic, because this means that both countries are moving from a standoff operation, meaning planes or capabilities that are being shot are outside of Iran and they shoot from afar into Iran, to a stand-in operation where the planes are above Iranian sky. And this is a completely different ballgame, because when you operate standoff, this is very unique and expensive capabilities, which are not endless. When you work stand-in, you use the simple bombs, very precise and simple bombs, and there is a huge amount, endless. And you can shoot and deal with all the different sites in a very precise and little way. And Secretary of War talked about that, the meaning of moving from standoff to stand-in and controlling Iranian skies. And at the moment, Israel and the US are systematically degrading all the capabilities of Iran, the police, the Basij forces, the Revolutionary Guards, the centers of government, the Navy, the Air Force, the air defense. Everything is being dismantled systematically, and the Iranians are powerless. They cannot do anything about it. What the Iranians managed to do in 4 days, they shot 500 ballistic missiles, not only on Israel, they shot it on multiple countries. Just Abu Dhabi was shot with 50 ballistic missiles. They shot 2,000 drones, many of them to neighboring countries. And the question is, okay, why are they shooting all these countries? So basically, Iran, they're trying to create chaos. They thought that if they will shoot all these countries, they will put pressure on the US to stop. They are also thinking that if they manage to bring up the prices of oil, this will affect the Americans and their support for the war, because we know how sensitive the American society is to prices of oil, and the prices went up all the way to $85. So the way the Iranians are trying to impact the prices of oil, they try to close the Hormuz straits. Following that, the US simply destroyed completely all their navy. So this didn't work well for them. And then they started shooting oil fields and refineries of Kuwait, of Oman, of the United Emirates, Saudi Arabia. And this is working better for them. This took up the price. But as I mentioned before, we are days from really degrading dramatically their capability to shoot anything, whether it's drones or ballistic missiles. These capabilities are being destroyed very, very fast. And there will be a moment when they will be powerless, not able to shoot anything. Israel and America completely dominating the skies. And then it's just a matter of time until they will have to surrender unconditionally. And it cannot end but with a change of regime. And a change of regime, at least for my perspective, is not bringing somebody from the same group like it happened in Venezuela. It needs to be somebody that the Iranians will support, like Reza Pahlavi. They have rallied behind him. They want him at least to lead an intermediary government that will bring them towards democracy. They don't want to see more of the same. And we believe that with a change of regime, obviously, once Iran stops funding all these terror proxies without funding, without guidance, without technology and weapons, obviously these terror armies will not be able to function. Obviously, in the reality where the Iranians are in a very bad shape, they demanded from Hezbollah to join the fight and shoot Israel, and Hezbollah had a big dilemma because they knew what the price will be, and they're also under a lot of pressure in Lebanon, but really they had no choice. They were built for this purpose, they're funded for this purpose, and they started an attack on Israel, not a very big one. They shot 3 rockets and some drones, but this was enough for us to take advantage and really start an operation that we have prepared for months and months. Israel has been preparing to destroy Hezbollah for a long time. We have degraded them dramatically before, and we kept attacking them continuously. But now is the moment to really dismantle them, and this is exactly what the IDF is going to do. So the combination of bringing down the regime and the extent to which we can degrade the Hezbollah should enable in the future the Lebanese government to finish the job and degrade them. and dismantle them. Now, there is two things that are similar. One thing that is similar between Iran and the issue of Lebanon is that in both cases, Israel and the US can set the terms for achieving the goal. But in Iran, in order to do so, we need the Iranian people. I mean, we can really destroy almost everything this regime has, including the leadership, but then we need the people to rise and take responsibility for the future. Same goes with Lebanon. We can degrade Hezbollah dramatically, but then we need the Lebanese government to do what it needs to do in order to finish dismantling Hezbollah. So not everything is dependent on kinetics and on the capability of the US and Israel. At the end of the day, we have the Iranian people and we have also the Lebanese government that needs to do their job. But I think that this is something achievable. Overall, the assessment was that the war will continue 5 weeks. Now, because we seem to be much more successful than what we predicted, maybe less, maybe 4 weeks, maybe even less. But it's definitely moving towards the right direction and towards a decisive win against Iran that will change everything. And all these countries that have been shot by Iran, now they are reaching out to Israel and begging for capabilities and air defense and technologies and wanting to side with Israel. Saudi Arabia also lately seemed to distance from the US and Israel and was getting closer a bit to Turkey and China. And suddenly now they're completely aligned with the US and Israel, and we're looking at normalizing relations. Everybody wants to side with the winners, and it's very clear who is going to win here. So we see the whole Middle East moving towards supporting Israel and the US, but not only the Middle East. Suddenly we also see Britain and France sending forces at the beginning, in the first day too. Really, their behavior was disgraceful and not very supportive. But as I said, everybody wants to support the winners. And overall, I can tell you, experiencing the war here in Israel, the morale in Israel is really, really high. People are really excited about what the IDF is doing and achieving with the US. People are proud. Of course, it's not fun to get shot with ballistic missiles. And we had some terrible tragedies with 10 people killed so far. But people understand how important it is and how it's going to change our reality end to end and bring later on stability, prosperity, and peace agreements. Thank you, Nitzan. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. We can take questions from the crowds. Amir, I would like to have the first question. Guys, you can write your questions in the chat and Philip will read them one by one. But I would like to start with the first question, which is actually the fate of Gaza. How do you see the conflict in Gaza resolves with the involvement of United States in the region and its big plans for a major financial force to turn Gaza into?
So when we talk about Gaza, at the present, the situation is that Israel is controlling 53% of the Gaza Strip, the eastern part of Gaza. Israel is surrounding Hamas from all sides, controlling also Rafah and the Philadelphia corridor, which is crucial to prevent the buildup of Hamas and weapons flowing from Egypt into Gaza. This is what enabled them to build themselves all these years, and now we're controlling this. But having said so, Hamas is regrouping and managing to smuggle to a certain extent using the humanitarian aid. And it's obvious that we need to finish the job. Now, IDF prepared decisive plans against Hamas. We know that we have to dismantle them and we have to demilitarize the Gaza Strip. We know that Hamas is not going to do it by themselves. They're not going to agree, although they signed a paper that says that they will agree. And now there is two predictions. The optimists, mainly on the American side, say if we bring down the Iranian regime and destroy Hezbollah, then also Hamas will understand that it's game over and they will agree to lay down their weapons and get out of Gaza and will demilitarize the Gaza Strip without the need of the IDF to maneuver and do the job. I think that most Israelis are a bit skeptical about this predicament, and we believe that the only way to deal with them is a Israeli maneuver. So you can imagine that if we are not afraid to fight against Iran 2,000 kilometers from Israel, obviously we don't think that dismantling Hamas is such a big problem. Before that, we had a challenge, which was the hostages, and we didn't want to endanger them. So this created for us challenges. But now, without hostages at all, for the IDF to dismantle Hamas, I would say almost it's a non-issue. I'm not saying it's not dangerous, but I would say it would take probably a few weeks to reach a point where Hamas falls, and especially if we finish the war against Iran and Hezbollah with a decisive win, and we have just Hamas to deal with. This is not going to be so complicated, and it will end also with a decisive win.
Thank you very much. Philip is going to take the questions from the chat, and as long as the time permits, we would like you to answer the questions.
Right. Thank you, Nitzana. We do have quite a bit of questions. I hope we can get to everyone. A question from Paul Bergman. Iran may become powerless, but they will still keep fighting until they die. Who will give the final blow? How will the existing leaders be physically displaced? Who will lead this?
Well, there is a certain level of uncertainty, but I would say this. We learned the lesson from last time where the president called the people to go out and take over their country, and then they got shot. So now we are first dismantling all these forces that have been oppressing them, the Revolutionary Guards, the Basij forces, the police. We're simply systematically destroying them and degrading them to the extent where at a certain moment, Israel and the US will call the Iranian people to get out and really storm all these centers of government and take over the country. And this will be done with drones defending them. Also, there is plans to weaponize them in different places. And once they really take over all the centers of government, then I am hoping that the US will let Reza Pahlavi come to Iran and take over an interim government that will start moving Iran to a new reality. Reza Pahlavi is a great friend of Israel and the US, and he said that the first thing he will do, normalize relations with Israel and the US and stop funding all these terror groups. How exactly it will happen, how it will evolve, This is not about shooting some military sites or nuclear sites. Change of regime is something very complicated with a lot of uncertainties. But one thing we control, the systematic destruction of this leadership and infrastructure of this regime. This we control. What will happen after we completely dismantle them? This is up to the Iranian people.
Okay, thank you, Amir. Next question is from Rachel. Do you have any idea how long it might take to reach the targets in this war, days or weeks?
We're talking about weeks. I would say that America only started. I'm saying America because in the first 4 days, Israel conducted 5,000 attacks and the US 2,000. But the US is amassing more and more and more forces. And the big attack didn't even start as far as the US is concerned. While Israel is attacking full scale from the very beginning, the US, I would say, is like a huge carrier that takes time to move, but it's a force that is mighty. It's huge, and then the U.S. is amassing more and more forces, and maybe in a week we'll see the full-scale attack of the U.S. on Iran. We're seeing now, which is amazing, that how many attacks there are with B-52, B-2, B-1 airplanes and so on. It's just the beginning. So the assessment is that probably a few weeks.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Jeffrey Schwartz. Are Israel and US going to arm the Druze on the ground to start a ground war against regime loyalists and stop the slaughter of its citizens? What do you think of that idea?
There are talks about some of the Kurd militias, the Persian Kurd militias that are on the Iraqi side, want to go in and fight. One thing I can say is that there is no motivation to break Iran. I mean, half of the Iranian people are not Persian, 25% Azaris, maybe 10% Kurds. You have Baluchis, Ahwazis. You have many minorities in Iran. Theoretically, this country could break, but the idea is not to break Iran into pieces, but do a change of regime.
Okay, the next question is from Neville Berman. Attacks from the air cannot stop those with guns who are prepared to shoot at protesters who are trying to overthrow the regime. How can Iranian civilians remove the regime without getting slaughtered?
So if we kill most of the Basij forces and revolutionary guards, this will make it very difficult for them to slaughter the Iranian people. The whole idea is telling the Iranian people to go out after we really destroy these forces to the maximum. Also, weaponize them where it's possible. And also in real time with drones and so on, give them air coverage and help them deal with any threat. Now, nothing is 100%, but I think it will be a completely different reality than what they experienced a month and a half ago.
Okay, next question is from Robert Bauschwitz. The IRGC and Basij are very embedded in Iran. Are there attempts to induce Artesh military units to defect and even protect the Iranian population so that their uprising might be more successful?
There are already many defectors, and the more we destroy this regime, there will be more and more defectors who are contacting the Mossad and the CIA. I think this phenomena will grow, and it's probably more likely to see it within the army and less with the very radical forces of the Revolutionary Guards. But Israel at the moment is really focusing its attack on all these Basij forces and the Revolutionary Guards and trying to dismantle them as much as possible.
Okay, next question is from Michael. Will the Iranian regime ideology allow them to surrender unconditionally?
Well, I'm a big believer in physics. And at the end of the day, if you really simply dismantle them physically and kill them, I think that at a certain point they have no choice. I mean, ideology, the Nazis also had ideology, didn't help them at the end. So once you completely control Iranian skies and you can simply do whatever you want and shoot whatever you want at any time, the regime is not viable anymore. There's no viability. Especially if you hunt them down systematically. And again, because there is no boots on the ground, we have to rely on the Iranian people. They are the boots on the ground in this case.
Okay, next question is from Jacob Kinsler. Is there a reliable and able alternative to the present regime in Iran if needed it collapse? If indeed it collapses.
So I mentioned that I think that the Iranian people for the first time are rallying behind Reza Pahlavi, as the son of the Shah. And they seem to want him to lead the change in Iran. So yes, they're recognizing a leader, they're raising the Shah's flag. And I think this gives a real opportunity to do this change.
Okay, next question is from Anthony Pam. Moving to a greater threat, do you see Israel best minds becoming more involved in combating and mitigating climate change in Israel in the future?
If there is one thing that brought us to the 7th of October is talking about climate change. I remember before the 7th of October, after Operation Guardians of the Wall, I participated in a briefing in the headquarters of the army. My organization was under the understanding that we are going to be in a multi-front war. We're going to war. I wrote a whole book about that called No Retreat, based on this assessment and describing the war that is coming. And I was really shocked to see when they brought us a major from the intelligence that was supposed to brief us on Gaza and all of that, and started this briefing talking about climate change. I think that we're facing, as the Jewish people in Israel, we're facing some big challenges that we need to focus on. One is, of course, this multi-front war and the fight over hegemony in the Middle East. The other is the huge challenges we have inside Israel, talking about our governance and sovereignty inside the land. We're facing many challenges. And I think that, and the other thing, of course, is anti-Semitism and delegitimation, where we have so many challenges, and we need to focus on really what will change the fate of Israel and the Jewish people.
Great. Next question is from Aviel Leitner. And the question is, what will ensure that even if the regime is collapsed, that an Iraq-style insurgency will not occur?
Nothing is sure, but we'll have to stay proactive. And if we see dangers being created, we'll have to act. This is what we need to do. We cannot control everything, but I want to be optimistic and think that if there will be a change of regime, that we'll really have a chance to see a new reality for a long time in Iran.
Okay, another question from Linda Khan. talk about Turkey and Qatar. What is the likelihood that these two countries will try to fill the power vacuum that will emerge, and what difficulties will arise for Israel that these countries may be far more subtle in their desire to undermine and harm Israel?
Yeah, it's something we take in account, and I think that the buildup of the IDF looking in the long term needs to look at Turkey, at Egypt, Qatar, as potential future enemies or rivals. And yes, when one axis is being dismantled or weakened, the other axis might rise, and we have to take it in account. And I think we are doing so.
Okay, very good. Amir, do we have room for two more questions?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. So next question is from Nancy Toby. Her question is, it seems that there is never surrender anymore, just a series of ineffective ceasefires. What are the chances we will require a real surrender and accountability like the Nuremberg trials?
I think this is what we're doing now. This war is going to end with unconditional surrender of this regime.
Okay, and final question from Marjorie. What are the implications for terror cells in the US now we're being told to stay off transit and away from synagogues, etc.?
Well, I think that it's obvious that the Iranians might try to retaliate by terror attacks. And obviously, we need to be alert everywhere, globally. Does it mean stay far from synagogues? This sounds to me, I don't know, a bit extreme. I think that we have to be alert, but continue our daily life, not stay away from synagogues.
Okay, Nitzana?
Thank you very much, Amir Avivi, for this insightful lecture and your patience to answer these questions. We believe that Israel is going through a very tough time, however, essential time. The people in Israel dearly needed this war. We are sick and tired being terrorized by the proxies of Iran, being threatened with the nuclear weapon of Iran, and continue living on the edge that in any given time there will be a terror organization or a terror regime wanted to dismantle the Jewish state. So we are very resilient, and we are waiting to have this war ending with a great victory of the United States and Israel. And as far as Shurat HaDin, we will continue the fight with the side of Israel and the United States to beat terrorism, to beat those who delegitimize these countries, and to help our people to finally live safely in our country. I appreciate your participating in this special briefing, and we will update you from time to time with more briefings as long as the situation will continue and the conditions will allow. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.